There is a particular kind of silence that can settle into a long relationship. It isn't the silence after a fight, it's the silence of comfort. You can sit across from someone you love, someone you chose on purpose, someone you would still run into traffic to protect and feel almost nothing where there used to be fire. And the cruelest part is that nothing went wrong. They didn't change, you didn't stop caring. If anything, you got closer. You learned the sound of their breathing in the next room. You can finish their sentences. You know exactly how they take their coffee, how they fold under stress, what they say before they say it. And somewhere, inside all that knowing, the wanting quietly went out. So here is the question almost nobody asks out loud, because it feels like a betrayal just to think it. Why do we so often stop desiring the very people we love the most? We assume desire dies because something is broken. The trust is gone, the attraction faded, the relationship failed. But sometimes desire fades for the opposite reason. Not because you grew apart, but because you grew together. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally, completely succeeded in loving them. The closeness you worked so hard to build is the same closeness that put the fire out. To understand this, you have to accept something uncomfortable. Love and desire are not the same thing. They are not even pulling in the same direction. The therapist Esther Perel spent decades sitting with couples who loved each other and no longer wanted each other. In her 2006 book Mating in Captivity, she lays out a paradox that's almost mathematical in its cruelty. Love, she says, is about having, desire is about wanting, and you cannot want what you already fully have. Love grows through closeness, through repetition, through the slow accumulation of trust. The more you fold someone into your daily life, the safer you feel. But desire runs on the opposite fuel. Desire needs distance. It needs mystery. A little uncertainty, the gap between you and another person that you ache to cross. And every time you close that gap in the name of intimacy, you also quietly starve the thing that made you reach across it in the first place. So, the very habits that make love durable, the togetherness, the predictability, the total transparency, are the same habits that put desire to sleep. Think about what we are actually told a good relationship looks like: total honesty, constant togetherness, no secrets, no separateness, two people merging into one. And that may be a beautiful recipe for love. But Perel's unsettling observation is that it can be a terrible recipe for desire, because desire doesn't want to merge. Desire wants to reach, and you cannot reach for someone who is already standing inside your skin. Now you could stop there and call it tragic. Two needs that can never be satisfied at the same time. But the biology underneath makes it stranger still. There is a phenomenon researchers named, half as a joke, the Coolidge effect. The term was coined by the behavioral scientist Frank Beach in the late 1950s, borrowed from an old, probably apocryphal anecdote about President Coolidge. In the lab, the finding is real and well documented, at least in animals. Male rat mated to exhaustion with one partner will appear completely finished. Introduce a new partner, and he springs back to life instantly. Same body, same exhaustion, but novelty flips the switch back on. Underneath, it is a chemistry we all share. Dopamine, the molecule of wanting and pursuit, surges in response to novelty and fades with repetition. The brain isn't really built to keep wanting the same thing forever. It's built to chase the new, the thrill at the start of a relationship, the sleepless nights, the obsession, the electricity of not yet knowing that was partly just your nervous system responding to a stranger. And the quieting you feel years later isn't a malfunction. It's habituation. It's exactly what brains are designed to do with anything they encounter often enough, which lands us in a genuinely dark place. If love demands closeness and closeness kills mystery, and the brain dims its wanting for anything familiar, then is lasting desire just a beautiful illusion we're all chasing? Are we built to grow bored of the people we build a life with? Here's the trap most couples fall into without ever naming it. When the wanting fades, they assume the solution is to get even closer. More time together, more talking, more merging. Pull the other person in tighter. But if Perel is right, that's like trying to put out a fire with the very thing it's starving for. The problem was never too much distance. Sometimes, the problem is that there's no distance left at all. But this is where the story turns. Because the science of novelty doesn't only point toward despair. It points toward a way out, just not the one we expect. The psychologist Arthur Aron ran a series of studies published around the year 2000 on couples and novelty. He took ordinary long-term partners and had some of them do mundane things together and others do something novel and a little thrilling, slightly challenging, slightly outside the routine. And the couples who shared the novel, arousing experiences reported meaningfully higher relationship satisfaction afterward. Not because they talked more, because they felt expanded. The newness attached itself to the partner standing beside them. That's the key, the brain hands us almost mockingly. The dopamine doesn't actually care whether the novelty comes from a new person. It only cares that something is new, which means the antidote to habituation was never another partner. It was bringing the unfamiliar back into the familiar one. We keep imagining that desire is something you either have for a person or you don't, like a battery that slowly runs flat. But it might be closer to attention. It fades. When you stop truly seeing someone, when they collapse into a fixed idea in your head, fully known, fully solved, and it can return the moment they surprise you again. The person didn't have to change. You just have to stop being so sure you already know them. This is what Esther Perel means when she says the real task is to bring a sense of the unknown into a familiar space. Not to manufacture drama, not to invent distance through coldness, but to remember that the person across the table was never actually fully knowable. You decided they were, you filed them away as solved because solved feels safe. And in exchange for that safety, you let them become invisible. The couples who keep wanting each other year after year aren't the ones who merged most completely. They are often the ones who never quite finished merging, who left room, who kept a private inner life, their own friends, their own pursuits, their own mystery, and let their partner stay. In some small way, a person they were still getting to know, that fire you had at the very beginning, the obsession, the ache, the not being able to think straight. We treat it like the gold standard, the thing to get back, but that wasn't the deepest love you've ever felt. It was the heat of strangers. It burned so bright, partly because you knew almost nothing about each other. What you have now is rarer. It's just quieter, and we were never taught how to keep it lit. So maybe the question was wrong from the start. The question isn't how do I get back the fire I had at the beginning. That fire was the heat of strangers. You can't be strangers again, and you wouldn't want to be. The real question is quieter and harder. Can you look at the person you know better than anyone on earth and admit that you don't fully know them at all? Can you let them be a little unfinished, a little free, a little out of reach, even now? Because the opposite of desire was never hatred, it was certainty. And the cure for certainty is the willingness to be surprised by someone you thought you'd already learned by heart.